This day after one of the greatest, or depending upon your preferences when it comes to watching football, worst Monday Night Football games of all time. Not a whole lot of defense, but just enough flashes to add to the scoring and contribute to the 105 total points that were tallied by the Chiefs and the Rams on Monday night. One of the all-time classics, third highest scoring game in NFL history. And my favorite stat, Peter, now in NFL history, if you have scored 50 or more points, you are 216-1, thanks to the Chiefs scoring 51 but still losing last night.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as we've been talking about, Mike, there's so many different ways to go, but I'd like to give Jared Goff some credit in this game. You know, he's a guy who early on this season, I know he was on my MVP list. I kind of subbed him out for Todd Gurley. But think of the great throws that he has made in their two, in my opinion, really signature wins this year. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs last night, and in October, they beat the Minnesota Vikings, or September it was, whenever. And Jared Goff has made some absolutely beautiful drop in the bucket, throw it only where your receiver can catch it, deep downfield, only where his guys can catch it. And to me, remember when we were, you know, at the beginning of his first year when you know, that first coaching staff couldn't do anything with him, and people are wondering, okay, you're going to get rid of Goff and get somebody else. As a matter of fact, Mike, I'll tell you this. One general manager candidate, when they were thinking of making a clean sweep with Jeff Fisher, one of the general manager candidates for the Rams told me that he would seriously consider trading Jared Goff if he got the job. Well, I think the Rams are pretty happy with how this turned out. Jared Goff has been terrific and exactly what Sean McVay needs to run his offense. An unemotional computer at quarterback who can drop throws into the arms of Brandon Cooks and Higbee and Woods and those guys 35 and 40 yards downfield, because Sean McVay must have a quarterback who can throw the ball downfield and drop dimes. He has that in Jared Goff.
And the thing about Goff, he can do everything that they need him to do. He can make all the throws. He can run when he needs to run, and he's durable. For a guy who looks a little spindly, a little wiry, right? He takes hits and he keeps getting up. He went down a couple times last night, and I thought, is he going to be favoring his shoulder? But he is a guy who can take that pounding. He doesn't take a lot of it, but he takes enough, and he makes the throws, and it's just so reliable. It's so steady. And for a team that's in a city that is founded on flash, he is so unflashy. I think it makes it easy to overlook the guy. I mean, we get caught up in Todd Gurley. We get caught up in Aaron Donald. Jared Goff is just kind of there, but he's getting it done. And you're right. He's been the perfect quarterback for Sean McVay's offense. And the contrast between how he was viewed under Jeff Fisher and how he's been viewed the last 2 years is stark. But I still don't think enough people appreciate what he can do and the throws he can make and the things he's doing. I think there's almost this sense that Sean McVay, almost like Andy Reid could turn anybody into a great quarterback. Sean McVay could turn anybody into a great quarterback. So he's doing it with Jared Goff. But if it wasn't Jared Goff, it would be somebody else. I feel like that's the attitude that people have.
Whether he could or whether he couldn't, you know, whether he could make a quarterback out of Chase Daniel or whoever, it doesn't matter.
Nathan Peterman.
Yeah, well, that would matter. But what I'm saying is that he's doing it with this guy, and I'll never forget. A long time ago, Mike, I was working for a paper on Long Island called Newsday in New York, and they had me go and do a story because the Giants had just won the Super Bowl. They had me go and do a story back in the days when you could travel a lot for newspapers on what pitfalls face teams when they're trying to repeat as champions. And I'll never forget, I went to interview Pat Riley about the Los Angeles Lakers and how great they were. And he was so infuriated by this whole thing. The coach just has to roll it out. He goes, you know, in this game, your challenge as a coach is to make great players greater. and to continue their development as players. And I think that's what Sean McVay does. He gets Brandon Cooks and he says, we're going to make you better. He gets Jared Goff, who was great at Cal. He says, we're going to make you better. And that is what happens, I think, when you're coached by a guy like Sean McVay, who's going to think of things that can help you get better. And that's why, in my opinion, he's so significantly better under Sean McVay than he was under the staff of Jeff Fisher.
He's currently second in the league with 3,547 passing yards, third in touchdown passes with 26, and he's second in yards per attempt, 9.31. That is moving the offense when you are gaining 9.31 yards every time you throw the football. And look, we see the Rams now at 10-1. They had the one loss on the road against the Saints. The Saints still have one loss. And does it come down to, is it this simple? Is it this easy to say whoever has home field for the rematch between the Rams and Saints is the Super Bowl favorite? Or is there another team in the NFC that you think could disrupt what feels like an inevitable reunion of those two old NFC West teams?
I doubt it, Mike. But, you know, the Bears are so good on defense. Their defensive front is just fantastic. And if Khalil Mack stays healthy, Akeem Hicks stays healthy, they're going to be tough to beat. The whole question is, you know, are they going to be able to play offense well enough? Are they going to be able to put up enough points? Imagine if the Bears have to play both of those teams. They got to beat the Rams and the Saints to get to the Super Bowl. That would be the biggest gauntlet a team has ever surmounted to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, imagine you beat the Rams and the Saints and you haven't even won the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the incredible part of it. But the one thing is, I'll just make this point. Do not eliminate, especially after they've turned the ball over a bunch against the Patriots and the Rams. Just don't eliminate the Kansas City Chiefs, because they're good enough, if they don't turn it over, to score 50 and to beat anybody on any day. Now, again, that's a very big if, but because they have turned it over when they've played their mega games. But I think that Andy Reid's got a chance to get this figured out. They'll go back. And, you know, obviously their really big game down the stretch is Chargers, probably with a healthy Bosa and with a formidable defense, coming in on a short week Thursday night to play Kansas City in December. And that will really tell the tale, in my opinion, of whether the Chiefs can hold on to home field and advance in the playoffs.
Yeah, Chiefs have Raiders twice, the Ravens, the Chargers, and a trip to Seattle on December 23rd, Sunday Night Football. And, you know, we've been pointing toward Patriots-Chiefs as an AFC Championship game rematch of that classic from earlier this year. Rams-Saints in the NFC, and I keep looking for teams that could disrupt. And, Peter, I think the Seahawks, if they end up matching up with the Rams in the divisional round. First, they have to get to the playoffs, obviously, and then the Seahawks would have to win in the wild card round. But I think the Rams want nothing to do with the Seahawks for a round 3 after giving up 31 points to them twice. And I also think a team, and this may sound crazy, and there's a chance that it is. I feel like if the Cowboys make it, and if the Cowboys formula works, and, you know, Chris Sims and I talked about this yesterday, if the Cowboy, you can tell, like in the first 5 minutes of a Cowboys game, whether they've got a chance to win, because they've got one formula, they've got one plan, they've got plan A, and that's it. And if plan A is working, and you can, and if it's a physicality-based approach on both sides of the ball, if it's working, that's the Cowboys' day. And I could see them, if their approach would work against the Rams or the Saints, I could see them stunning one of those two teams. Because that's, what do you think? What's all the hype going to be? Just like last year, Steelers-Patriots. Steelers-Patriots. Oh, we can't wait for Steelers-Patriots. Jaguars had something to say about it. I think that's going to be the fascinating wrinkle as those four teams, Patriots, Chiefs, Saints, Rams, start hovering toward those rematches. Who's going to potentially throw that monkey wrench into the plans? And I think the Seahawks could do it with the Rams, and I think the Cowboys could do it with either of those teams.
Well, there's no question, but you have to be able to play ball control. You know, the season that reminds me of that, of Dallas's challenge this year, is the 1990 New York Giants. Remember when they go to San Francisco, it might be the best 49er team of all time. The Giants play ball control with a strong running game and Jeff Hostetler at quarterback. They kick 5 field goals, force a couple of turnovers. They beat the 49ers 15-13. They're going to play one of the best offensive teams of all time, the Buffalo Bills, in the Super Bowl. When Bill Parcells gets on the team bus at Candlestick Park after beating the 49ers, he looks at his offensive coordinator, Ron Earhart, and he says, you got to play clock ball against the Buffalo Bills. In other words, hold on to it as long as you can. The Giants hold on to it for 41 minutes, keep the ball away from Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, and they eke out an ugly, ugly victory. So they win the Super Bowl. And that year taught me one thing about football, that teams that can play defense, teams that can run, and I think it's still true today, and you watch the Dallas Cowboys, that's their chance. Play defense, run it, play keep away from the great offensive teams, and you're going to have a chance to win any game.
And, I think back to what you said earlier in the program, Peter, that football has changed. Here we are in the aftermath of a very significantly hyped Monday Night Football game that delivered. 9-1 teams coming in 54-51. You mentioned Giants 49ers. Before that championship game that year in 1990, they had a round 1 Monday night. They both came in 10-1. And that was at the exact opposite spectrum. 7-3 was the final score of that game. Both of the quarterbacks stunk because the defenses were so good. So here we are, 28 years later. It is completely the opposite way. It's arena football in comparison to what we saw between the Giants and the 49ers back in 1990. But you're absolutely right. You think about weather. Now, it won't matter if you're playing indoors in the Superdome, but think about Kansas City, think about New England, outdoors in the elements. You get some of these teams out there, and if they can control the clock, control the ball, and just be physical. You hear that all the time. Mike Vrabel told me after the Titans beat the Patriots, the way to beat the Patriots is be more physical than them in every phase and make them work for every yard they gain. A team like the Cowboys can do that to these high-powered offenses, make them feel every blade of grass that they try to advance. And that's why even though we get caught up in the great teams, there's other teams out there saying, don't forget about us. And I think there's some folks that could make things very interesting in January. When we return, I want to take up our question of the day as it relates to a potential Chiefs-Rams rematch in the Super Bowl, or would you like to see the Chiefs and the Saints get together? We'll let you know what folks are saying about that when PFT Live continues.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.